Hey everybody, it's Brad, and welcome back to the Bandwidth Tapes. Today I'm talking with someone I met years ago in Atlanta when my band opened for the Bacon Brothers. On stage, we immediately started nerding out over our Aguilar bass rigs, and he handed me the first uke bass I ever played. That bassist is Paul Guzzone. And as you'll hear, that moment was just a tiny slice of a huge, fascinating career. Paul has spent a long time holding down the low end with the Bacon Brothers. He's toured and recorded with legendary artists, written jingles and music for major brands, and spent nearly 40 years teaching rock and contemporary culture at Pace University. We get into tone and touch, the origin story of the Bacon Brothers band, the realities of the music business, the magic of live music, and the creative partnership he's built with his wife, Mary Ellen. Here's my conversation with Paul Guzzone.
I try to live my life with no regrets. I wanna have fun despite the debts. Am I gonna make it? I'm taking bets, but I don't know how to go slow. And there's a long list of things I'm doing without, but no lack of problems to worry about. And I don't know how tomorrow is gonna turn out, but there is one thing that I know. I'm gonna dance while I can, sing while I'm able. Going for broke, you're leaving nothing on the table. You only go round once, so this is my plan. I'm gonna dance while I can, rock it while I got it, and do what I love without a penny in my pocket. Someday, I'm gonna be gone. So from now on, I'm gonna dance while I can, dance while I can.
Paul, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm really good, Brad. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you. You and I met each other. I'm trying to remember how long ago it's been. It's probably been somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 or 7 years ago. I was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, and you were touring, playing bass with the Bacon Brothers.
Yes,
and
sir.
we did a show opening for you all, and you and I met. We were both Aguilar players.
That's it. I do. It's all coming back to me now.
Yeah, and you also had the first uke bass that I had ever played, and I still haven't bought one yet. But I remember playing it, thinking, how can this small instrument sound like this?
Yeah. That's what everybody. That's what everybody says. It's. I would say 75% of the time, I have people walking up to me after a show saying, either if they're not a musician, they'll say, "What is that you're playing?" And I say, "It's a big bass ukulele." Or if they're a musician, and especially if they're a bassist, they're going, I can't believe it's making that sound.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful instrument, and I heard it. A blues guitar player friend of mine sent me a link out of the blue about 10 years ago, 12 years ago maybe, saying, "You got to listen to this." And it was just a promo from Kala, where they had plugged in the instrument, got a nice sound on it, and just played a couple of notes. And like I have with you now, I had my headphones in. Listen to this. It's an MP3 that he sent to me. And he just said, "Can you believe how this sounds?" And I heard it. And I thought, yeah, this is remarkable. It kind of had the punch of an old Fender, mm-hmm. and the warmth. I don't know how the person who recorded it was playing it, but it really piqued my interest. And then a few years after that, we were getting ready for another Bacon Brothers tour, and we were just talking about ways to change up the show a little bit. And we have such a variety of music that we play in the band. We said, why don't we just do a quote unquote acoustic set? We'll just, Frank said, our drummer, Frank Velarde, said, yeah, I could, play conga or get a cajon. And we just sort of improvised it at a couple of rehearsals. And then I said, you know what would work with this? I'm going to get the U bass, because it's, even though I'm plugging it in, I mean, we're all plugging in, it looks acoustic.
Yeah.
And so I went to my local music store here, Alto Music, north of me here, and I played they had about a half a dozen of them hanging on the wall. And I tried a bunch of them. They had 2 fretless instruments. So I played the fretless, and that really won my heart because I sense it as sounding like an upright bass.
Absolutely.
So with the fretless aspect to it, you can growl it, you can vibrato it. The only thing you can't do is bow it, but it's a wonderful sound. And then since then I've really figured out how to do fun stuff with it. I use I don't think I have them here. I use these heavy ukulele picks, which are felt, and I punch it real hard so I can get that Fender-esque kind of, the old P bass sound from the 50s pops out of it. Or I could pick it like a country guitar, which we do in one of our songs. One of our songs is a wonderful tune that Michael wrote called 36 Cents, which has this great guitar break in it. And twice in the song, we just do it tutti. Everybody in the band does the guitar break, the bass, keyboard, all the guitars. And it's a wonderful moment. So I could do that kind of really fast picking. I could growl it on some slow ballads. It's a versatile instrument. So
Yeah,
I was very pleased with it.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I had heard about it, but I'd never held one. I'd never played it, and well, first of all, I was just so happy with how just open you were. You and I had met each other 30 seconds before that, and you're like, "Here, why don't you try this?" And I'm like, "What a cool guy this guy is."
Well,
huh?
if you're a bass player, and I was really an evangelist for this instrument, and sadly, I have never been contacted by the Kala people, but I'm sure that I'm responsible for at least a couple of hundred sales of that instrument.
So let's go ahead and get the other rig piece out of the way, and then we'll kind of jump back into some other things. I've been an Aguilar rig player for a long time. Mm-hmm. I think you play the 2 single 12 cabinets. Is that right? Mm-hmm. I have those same cabinets. I don't know if I was playing them. I also have a 212 cabinet. I may have been playing that night. I'm not sure. For my playing, there's no better bass rig on planet Earth as far as I'm concerned. I love them. I've loved them from the first moment I've heard them. I have Aguilar pickups in my guitars. I love it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What was your journey into going with that?
I was introduced to them at a rehearsal studio here in New York City. There's a place that we use regularly called Euphoria, which is really a high-end, small rehearsal facility. I think he has 4 rooms. And it's not like studio instrument rentals. It's not a big sound stage. It's an intimate space. He has a lot of jazz musicians, pop, studio musicians playing there. And we like the smallness of it. But he's got terrific gear. And one day, 20 years ago, I guess, I walked in, and there was this Aguilar, and I had never seen one before. I can't recall what it was. I think it was probably a very powerful head. I don't remember what model it was or the wattage, but it was definitely big and powerful. And I think it was a 212 cabinet, a big 212 cabinet, not the newer ones like you have. And it was sold the minute I heard it. I mean, I had to be careful how loud I was because it's easy to go over the top. But it's got great sensitive tone controls and the sweepable mid-range, because I'm really sensitive to that. I want my instrument to sound rich but clear, and there's nothing like it. And for the road guys, we don't play massive venues, but we do play outdoors sometimes, and those 2 cabinets are perfect. Now I'm working with in-ears on stage anyway, so really what I'm just getting is, and our sound man is just getting the tone of the cabinet. It's sending it through my ears. But I could tell you that in theaters, which is really where it sings, if I want to just feel the instrument on a beautiful stage in a 2,000-seat theater, proscenium stage, I could feel it through my feet without it being like a subwoofer. It's tight. Yeah. In fact, I have a problem with certain sound men. Not our front of house guy; he's great. overusing the subwoofer in the houses that we play. If we get a guy who's a rock mixer who's used to mixing loud rock bands, that has its place. But these guys should look where they are. And we're playing in the theater, we're playing in a small room. At an outdoor concert, there's something different. We played Stagecoach this year out in California, and that was a massive audience. So okay, go ahead, go crazy with your subwoofer. You got to project, a couple
Yeah,
thousand
you have plenty
yards.
of room to push that air everywhere it wants to go. Yeah.
But it could just destroy a mix if you're not careful with it. So, and then I get yelled at.
Right.
That's not my fault.
The bass is too. No,
that's not me, pal.
It's not me. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on it. It's like it can sound exactly like you, or it can sound better than you. It's like it's incredible what it will do, and it inspires. I think it just inspires people. That's one of the things that I don't think many people talk about when they discuss gear, whether it's a guitar, a piano. It's we tend to think of the acoustic instruments as inspirational, and they are because we hold them and we feel the sound going through our bodies. But an electronic instrument, can also do that, and especially the reproduction of the sound. So a bad amplifier can be a total drag. Yeah, you're right.
A great sounding amplifier will inspire you. It makes you feel like you're doing something great.
Yeah. How much do you feel of your sound is in your hands and in your touch?
It's a good question. I never thought about it.
And I'll say this. I've had times where I've sat in with the band and I'll pick up another bass player's guitar and play it through their rig, and it still kind of sounds like me, So I do think that there's something to be said about your touch and how you play the instrument that contributes to the tone.
Well, I can't be objective about that, but in analyzing it here for the first time in front of you, I never really thought of it. I suppose not since I was studying upright, which I stopped playing many years ago, but I studied upright with a couple of great teachers, including the great Richard Davis. I was honored to work with him for about 6 months, and he really made it clear to me how important the touch is on that instrument. Again, with electric instruments, I don't think about it all that much, but you're right. It does matter. The gentleness of the plucking, the muting, palm muting, of course, the choice of the notes and the rhythms, that's goes without saying, but the sound of the instrument, I suppose, it's a significant amount with how I play it. And from song to song, I guess I've internalized it. It's been so long. I've been doing this for so long. I've just internalized that. So I just don't really think about it, but I'm sure it's a significant part of how I sound.
Come on! Yeah! I got a ticket for speeding on the information highway, caught by the stress police. And when I look at you, I know you feel it too. We both gotta get some relief. From the phone calls, deadlines, madness in the headlines, people can be so cold. But when the wind and chill go to 20 below, I got a place we can go south of the coconut line. We'll be together and take our time, follow the sun and let it shine. I'll be yours and you'll be mine, south of the coconut line. We'll make our escape and be hard to find. So when the coast is clear, let's disappear south of the coconut line, baby, south of the coconut line.
When we met, you were and still are playing with the Bacon Brothers,
Kevin and
Michael. Kevin and Michael. Yep. Tell me about that band. I don't know a lot about how all of that started and how you all are connected to that group. I'd love to hear that.
It's a good story. It's a good story. Well, many years ago, in the early 1980s, I became the bassist for a guy named Tom Rush, who is kind of like the godfather of folk rock music in New England. He's most well known as the guy who first covered the songs of Joni Mitchell, Jackson Browne, and James Taylor on one album on Columbia in 1965, I think is when it came out. And he was kind of a really important artist in my youth, a folk rock person. You know, he was right there in the middle of all that. Still was on the same circuit as the band and Joni Mitchell, and he was. You know, remember there's a movie called Canadian Express or something Express. It was when a bunch of hippies took over a railroad train and went across Canada, and Janis was on it, the Grateful Dead, the band, Tom Rush. So he was in that crew. I think there was some other folks on it as well. So he goes back that far. I started working with him in the early 1980s, and he opened up a lot of doors for me just by being in that band. You know, we played at the great concert halls, you know, Kennedy Center, Carnegie Hall, Symphony Hall. He was big enough in the 1980s that he was headlining big outdoor shows and putting on these special concerts that were tributes to the folk rock world of his early life. So, you know, we got to play with Emmylou Harris and David Bromberg and Maria Moldauer and Bonnie Raitt. They were all on the stage with us, and in every case, that band would back up those people. So I had an amazing opportunity to meet and play with all these people. So that's one part. I'm telling you, this is a long story, but it starts there.
Yeah.
On one of our tours, somewhere along the way, in the late 80s, I'm thinking the late 80s, we did a show in Philadelphia at a really nice theater. And the opening act was a guy named Michael Bacon, who opened for us. And I remember being in the dressing room downstairs, and the percussionist, my old friend Marshall Rosenberg, who was in the Tom Rush band, came downstairs. He said, "You got to come upstairs and hear this guy. He's singing and playing the cello. He's accompanying himself on the cello and singing a James Taylor song." So I didn't go up, but Marshall told me about it, and I didn't meet Mike that night. But Mike was carefully listening to Tom Rush's band. And the band at that time was Marshall Rosenberg, who was a New York percussionist, kind of a folk rock percussion guy. Had a crazy array of percussion instruments, congas, bongos, had this beat up old film can that he played with brushes, lots of toys to make noises. And that was the drummer. And I was the bassist, and I was the rhythm section. So this percussion sound, sort of Latin percussion, but really kind of like world beat percussion, and me on bass, Tom on guitar, a guy named Erwin Fish on keyboards, piano, Joshua Snyder on saxophone, and occasionally we had these two guys, Eric Lilliquist and Dean Adrian, who were from New England, and these guys were two like Everly Brothers style harmonizers, really beautiful two-part harmony. So we had those two guys singing, I sang, and Tom sang. And it was this kind of, I'll describe it as a chamber folk sound, because it wasn't a folk rock sound. The music was eclectic. You know, they had the saxophone in there, which wasn't normally heard. And the choice of material was really interesting. You know, all of Tom's music. You just have to go and listen to it to describe it. But anyway, that was the band, and that's what Mike saw that night. And unbeknownst to me, he said to himself, I would find out years later, he said, if Kevin and I ever start a band, I want those two guys to be our rhythm section, meaning Marshall and I.
Really?
True to his word, he said it to himself, but he wound up calling me years later. He moved to New York, became a composer, a very successful film composer, mainly for television. You'll see his name all over PBS on all these documentaries, music, Michael Bacon music.
He studied with John Corigliano.
That's right, at Lehman College. Yeah. So he was working in Manhattan, you know, and at that point in time, I was working as a music producer at a more commercial style music house. We were doing corporate shows, and we were just starting to do commercial work. And we a mutual friend of ours recommended me to sing on one of the tracks that Michael was producing. He was doing something where he wanted me to sing a Kinks song. a dedicated follower of fashion. They had needed to redo that in a kind of orchestrated way, and I sang it for him. So we met again all those years later, and we struck up a relationship, and we started recommending studios to each other, musicians. If I needed somebody from the classical world, or as we say, the legit world, I'd call Michael and say, I need somebody who can play like a really good English horn. Who do you know? And he'd call me if he needed somebody to play steel guitar or a slide guitar. So it became like a connection like that. And we went back and forth for a couple of years, and then he just called me up one day, sometime in 1993, late 93 or early 94. He called up and said, my brother and I are starting a band, and you're the bass player. So, and what happened after that was we got together and sang. It was me and Michael and Kevin. Now, my wife and I had just seen The River Wild and I think Apollo 13. It was either one of those two, but whatever that year was. So I'd seen that like on a Tuesday night, and on that Friday night, I was in the studio with Kevin and Michael. And we're just sitting in a vocal booth, and I met him for the first time. I had known Michael for a while, but I'd never sang like in this capacity with Mike. So, as a performer and as a singer, when you're singing with somebody and you're harmonizing with them, you're fairly intimate. If you're going to do it right, you're going to be looking at each other, and you're going to be singing to each other, and you're going to be listening to each other's tone and trying to fit in and blend. So it was a very quick, intimate experience. And occasionally I'd find myself looking at Kevin's piercing blue eyes, and I would say to myself, holy blank, I'm with this guy. And this was like at a peak in his career. He was very big. This was even before the 6 Degrees game came along. So
right.
So we sang together first, and we had a beautiful blend, a really good blend. Michael pointed out that, when we were hitting our high notes, we each hit our high notes. I was hitting my highest note, Kevin hit his highest note, and Michael would hit his highest note. And it would always be Michael on the bottom, Kevin in the middle, me on the top. And the blend was really good, and it felt really nice. So, that was the most simple start of any band I've ever been in, was to sit around and sing. It was very folky.
Yeah.
It was like being backstage at the Philadelphia Folk Festival, So that was pretty cool. And there was no gig on the horizon. They were just going to start a band. And then a friend of Kevin's was opening a restaurant somewhere outside of Philly, invited Kevin to come down with his brother and play. So we added Marshall on percussion. We did some full rehearsals. We learned a dozen songs. And we played at the opening of this restaurant, which was really fun. And then Kevin wanted to play a real gig at someplace real. So I recommended a club not far from where I live now, in upstate New York. Actually, it was in upstate New York, a place called the Town Crier, which is a well-known venue on the circuit here back east. National acts, mid-level acts, sat about 350 people, really nice dinner theater vibe, really great food, upscale. And it happened to be about a half an hour from where Kevin and Kira live in Connecticut, so it was perfect for them. So we did our first real show to a real audience. And that's when the whole thing kind of hit me and my wife, what we were getting into. Because we did this show, we did our sound check, we went back to Kevin and Kira's to have some dinner. And I was in their house, and Kira was cooking us chicken. My wife was there with us, and we went out back. And he has this beautiful place up there. He had horses then. And we took our first publicity picture. Kira took the picture. And it's Kevin and Marshall and Michael and I standing by a corral. A couple of us are sitting on the fence of the corral. And it's a great shot in the country. And it looks like a Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young record. We went back to the club after dinner, and it was packed, and it was buzzing. And it was filled with people who were really excited to see Kevin, and some big celebrities, including, Meryl Streep showed up because she lived up there with her husband. What's his name? The great director who directed Apollo 13. Can't think of his name now.
Ron Howard?
Ron Howard.
Wow.
we we went on Kevin and Michael were backstage, I went walking around. My wife was sitting out there, and she happened to be seated at the same table as Ron Howard. So I sat next to her and sat with Ron Howard and talked. And trust me, this was nothing I ever expected to have happen.
Sure.
And, you know, most of us are comfortable hanging out with musicians. Musicians are easy to talk to.
Yep.
Most people walk up to us. Movie stars, Hollywood, that's another world.
Yeah.
You know, it's the people react differently to that. And that was the night where that really became clear to me. And then for many, many nights after that, there would be situations where, you know, we'd be surrounded by fans. I mean, out of control fans. And it was sometimes pretty scary. It had nothing to do with me, but I happened to be in the middle of it. Right? So there's tons of stories like that. But that's how the band got together. And I thought it was going to be, you know, maybe a year's worth of gigs and then it would sort of fade away. They just kept on writing. We got better. When we did the Rosie O'Donnell show in New York, before we had a record deal, we played the show. We did a couple of tunes, got a great reaction. And when Rosie was interviewing the guys, they said, "So when's the record coming out?" And Kevin says, "Well, we don't have a record deal." And she said, "What do you mean you don't have a record deal?" And he said, "Nobody's asked us." Well, there were record people who were watching that show, so the phone rang the next day, and we got an offer from an independent label to work with them. Major labels were asking also, but the major labels were also interested in having Kevin put his songs in his movies. That was a stipulation, and he couldn't do that. He couldn't promise that, and he really wanted a separate career. He wanted to be accepted as a musician, not as a singing actor. That took 30 years to break that spell.
Well, I applaud him for doing that. Yeah.
And it was never a vanity project. You know, we had to make it work. If we couldn't sustain it as a band financially, he didn't want to do it. So we managed to do it, and it's been 31 years. And I will say the last 10 years has been astonishingly good. I mean, it was great in the beginning, but now it's artistically really become a cohesive unit. So we got the record deal for the album. We got a drummer, my friend Frank Velarde, who worked with Michael, you know, in the studio. And we toured initially as a quartet, but slowly we added the drums. And now Frank is an integral part of the band. So he's with us everywhere, unless, you know, for some reason he can't make it, you know, on another gig or something. But that's the core of the band. And over the years, we've had keyboard players and various musicians coming and going. With each album, if something changes, we'll add a musician. But the core band is Michael, Kevin, myself, Frank, our current guitar player, Tim Quick from Nashville, and a young woman from Philadelphia named Mare, who Michael started working with a couple of years ago. She now adds this sort of vocal texture that we haven't had before, a female singer, and she's a keyboardist.
Wow.
So that's the big story.
Yeah.
Gotten small.
How many shows do you typically do in a year?
Usually at least 35. This year we're approaching 50.
Wow.
And it really depends on everybody's schedule.
Sure.
Or Kevin's schedule, really. But this year I was able to make all the shows. But there are years when I'm busy doing other stuff and I couldn't make shows. And I had a sub that I send in.
I was quite impressed with the sound of the band, just how solid everything sounded, both instrumentally and vocally. And just, you know, you sounded like you said, it's just a band that has played together for a long time, and it just has a vibe, it has a thing. You know?
I'm sure glad that you noticed that, because that's something we're really proud of, and I got to hand it to Kevin for sticking to it and sticking with it, because, you know, if he decided not to do it, there wouldn't be a band. I mean, Michael and I would probably play shows together, but it's really, you know, it's his and Michael's baby. And they stuck with it, and it really has it's a sound now, you know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, and yeah, I'm really impressed with what you guys are doing and how you're doing it, and you know, I imagine that for all of you, yeah, it probably took some adjustment to realize that, yeah, he's he is a famous person, and it's probably going to require a little bit of a different mindset than maybe we would normally have to go play a gig. But you all seem to, and even him. I mean, you can tell he's just one of the band members. He's not Kevin Bacon. He's a band member.
Yeah, he's always been down to earth. We're very close. I happy to say he's a close friend.
Yeah,
we've been through a lot of stuff together. Losses and of family members and all of that. And they're both very kind people. And, it's really a blessing.
Which is amazing. But I will say that is one piece of your musical life, because you do a lot of stuff.
Thank you.
I think I texted that to you, like, man, you've had quite a career. Yep. I mean, you do a lot of different things in the music industry, right? Are you an adjunct professor?
I am. I'm entering. Mary Ellen, my wife, Mary Ellen, was just talking about this today. She said, "How long have you been teaching at Pace?" It's at Pace University in New York City. And I said, "I think I'm entering my 38th year."
38 years.
Yeah.
What are you teaching there?
Well, I was invited to teach. The course was called Rock and Contemporary Culture. I inherited that class. I got a phone call in August from the chair of the department who asked, he said in his stentorial voice, "My dear Paul, have you ever thought about teaching?" Well, he knew me because I had musical directed some student productions down there. I have friends who went to school there, and it was all kind of ad hoc at the time. There was no music department at the school, so it was a theater department. So either they would hire musicians to come in, or they would ask friends of actors to come in and play. And there was always a musical director who was on keyboards, on piano, but there were no sidemen, no drummer, no horns, no bassist, no guitarist. So many times I filled in those positions usually bass. But as time went on, I got involved with theater people in New York in the cabaret world. My wife, Mary Ellen, is an actor and a writer. And at some point, she decided to do a cabaret show, so we put together a show. And through her, we became kind of a thing in the New York area, in the theater district, lots of cabarets in the Village. We would play these cabarets, and people liked the sound that I was getting with her. I did not play the piano, but I was the music director. I wrote the charts and helped on the arrangements. She and I did the arrangements. So I hired a piano player. I played bass. I brought in a drummer when we needed it. But it was a specific sound, and a lot of cabaret people liked what I did, so I ended up working with a lot of different cabaret folks, which is just a step away from musical theater. So I understood the essence of what it means to present a story in a song, to do musical theater type arrangements, some of the classic repertoire of the American Songbook, as it's known, but also doing quirky reinterpretations of contemporary music in a cabaret style, not unlike, people used to compare Mary Ellen to like a female Tom Waits. So we would do really interesting interpretations of songs. She even did a Tom Waits song. Not that she has that voice, but the sort of quirky off-center. She's not a mainstream pop singer. She's an entertainer, comedian, storyteller. So, or Bette Midler is another example. So I got to understand how to present that type of music. So that's how I wound up at Pace doing the musical direction. That led to the invitation to teach the rock history class. So I was walking this line between the pop rock world and the theater world. So it was very convenient to be working in a college and be able to, do all of that. And I wound up teaching this class, which is essentially a rock history class. And I inherited the syllabus, but pretty quickly, within a couple of years, I abandoned that and came up with my own approach. It's still called Rock and Contemporary Culture, but I really present it as a class in American music. Rock is certainly the center, is at the heart of it, but I go all the way back to the 20s and the Delta blues and the influences of early hillbilly music, early blues, and take it right through. And it's always a discussion of culture. Of course, you can't talk about the story of American music without talking about the American experience.
Right.
So a lot of it is instilled with that, and then I also have a component of the music business side. Students always, I talk about the people behind the music, the businessmen who made it happen, as well as the artists that everybody's familiar with, the people who are not on the stamps.
Right. Man, that's wonderful.
So, and I've had this 38 years, and at some point along the way, I was asked by a different chair of the department. My wife and I were both asked. Actually, I was asked, and I brought her in. I was asked to do a music business class in the theater department. And I said, yeah, it's kind of weird because there's no music department. Why don't we do it as an entertainment industry class? Of course, there's film courses, theater courses. There's some, preliminary theory of music classes, but there's no music major at the school. So my wife, Mary Ellen, and I developed a class called How the Entertainment Industry Works. And that became a syllabus that was really popular for over 20 years. We taught that until COVID came. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it some of the material, like, here are some of the things I wish someone had told me? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that I imagine it would save young artists lots of time to know this going into the business. That's
the realities
fantastic.
of what, and in every level, the realities of what makes, money makes the world go round. Let's start with that. It's whether you're trying to get a gig at a club or you're trying to get a lead role in a piece of theater. You have to understand it's not just your talent, it's the context where your talent is being viewed. How do you fit into this bigger plan? That's a tough
wonderful.
one. That's a tough one, and there's lots of basic stuff,
Well, and I would imagine that the content of the class is probably evolving things are changing. Yeah.
One of the problems with the class, and the reason why Mary Ellen decided she needed to stop, was that COVID came. We taught remotely for two and a half semesters. No, wait a minute. What am I saying? 3 full semesters. Yeah, 1.5 years. And when we came back, the quality of the students had really diminished, and it was just a tougher time. It took a long time to get over the COVID thing. That combined with the fact that we used to change up our course every year. We'd be able to do it, change it up in the fall, and it would be good through the spring. Changes began to happen so quickly in our industry that we were changing stuff every semester. The regulations, copyright, what was happening in the industry, who was powerful today that's not powerful tomorrow. How are things being marketed, both in theater, music, film, and media. We covered all of those, theater, music, film, and media. We covered the basics, the bare basics, but those bare basics crossed over. Intellectual property is common in all 4 of those, so we talk about that. And marketing is very similar in all of them. But everything was changing so quickly, it was just simply hard. It was too much work.
I can't even imagine. Yeah.
So she decided she'd had enough, and without her, I wasn't going to do it. we co-taught the class, which is really exciting. So we would have a lot of back and forth with the students, and it was like a tennis match, you know.
Yeah,
They were going back and forth. It was really kind of cool. Yeah.
And I imagine that there's obviously overlap, but based on both of your unique experiences as entertainers, you probably have some unique perspectives on some things that it really gave them a much broader perspective on the content you were presenting.
Sure.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I know you have a company called Triple Z Music. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And I know you've done all kinds of amazing things. It was like everything I kept reading was like, wait, what? He's done this. Wait, what? He's done this. Jingle writing. I mean, you've done it all, man. It's incredible. Yeah. And I want to talk about that, and I'm setting that up. But I want to take a few steps back, and I want to kind of find out what got you here. Where did it all start for you as a musician, and what kind of lit the fire that is still burning?
Well, as virtually everybody from my generation, it certainly was the Beatles that got me started. And I had played the violin prior to that. I was attracted to music in grammar school. I went to a Catholic grammar school, and they offered a music program, piano, violin, woodwinds. We didn't have a piano in our house. Some reason I wasn't interested in woodwinds, so I picked the violin. So I did 3 years of violin lessons until the 8th grade. I think the 8th grade was when the Beatles came along, and I said, ooh, looks like it's going to be more fun if I do that. So I lobbied to get a guitar, and I got an electric guitar, of course. And by the time I got to high school, I met other people who were doing the same thing. So it was that typical road, and it was really for the fun of it. I did have music background, so I understood how to read music, and I was a little more serious than the guys who just wanted to, flail around and play on the bars. I was interested in doing something more respectable. Mm-hmm. So my Catholic high school had something called the Folk Club, and I went to a co-institutional high school. So that meant boys are on one side and the girls are on the other. It was not co-educational. So there was the girls' side and the boys' side in the Catholic high school. But in that club, it was boys and girls together. So there was an extra added high school emphasis to meet some girls in the folk club. So we did get together and sing, Woody Guthrie songs, Pete Seeger songs, Crosby, Stills, and Nash songs, because it was that was the era, 67, 68, 69. I graduated in 70. So it was like right in the sweet spot of that era of folk rock. So the Creedence Clearwater Revival, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One of my buddies from that club, a guy named Dan Daly, was working with one of the women in that club, Michelle Conway. And the two of them had a friend, it was her boyfriend, who was their manager. He was a year or two older than they were. So he took it upon himself to manage their folk duo. And then Dan started writing songs with Patrick. That was the guy, Pat Sharada. And that was the first time I experienced, people writing their own material. These were songs that were being created in front of me. I wasn't going to buy the sheet music or listen to the record. They were doing it in front of me. That was a new experience at age 18 or 19, whatever it was. So I wound up being part of that group. So it was Michelle, Dan, myself, the three of us singing, 2 boys and a girl. And then one of the guys I had worked with in my rock band in high school, a guy named Mike Malfisi, he got kicked out of the Catholic school. It was in a public school at this point, but he was looking to do some stuff. So I said, why don't we get my friend Mike to come in and play congas or drums? Pretty quickly, we had a group called Revival, Revival, as in folk revival. And we would go in on school nights. We would go in on a Monday night to the Gaslight Cafe on McDougal Street, and on a Tuesday night to Folk City on West 3rd Street in Greenwich Village. Look up both of those clubs. Maybe you know about them already. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But this was ground zero for the 1960s folk music boom in Manhattan, in New York City. By 1970, 1971, it wasn't, Dylan had long gone, Judy Collins was gone, but there were still people there who, were formidable. Dave Van Ronk, for example, somebody that we knew from there. Bunches of people, Carolyn Hester. So we got part of that scene in Greenwich Village. One night, we were playing at Folk City. After we graduated high school, did a regular gig at Folk City. We would play there for a week at a time, 3 times a year. That was one of our regular gigs. Into that place came 2 guys. Well, I came one guy, a guy named Alan Pepper, who was partnered with a guy named Stanley Snedowski, and the 2 of them were booking shows at the Village Gate. They were young entrepreneurs. They were 10 years older than us. They're young music industry entrepreneurs. Their hero was the guy from San Francisco, Bill Graham. They idolized Bill Graham. So Bill Graham opened up the Fillmore East in the East Village, and that became sort of like their template. They wanted to do that. But they also wanted to do management, music management. Alan saw Revival, and he thought there was something that he could get behind. He loved the vocal harmonies, the youthful energy of it, the original music. He called his partner in, Stanley Sadowski, and he said, okay, let's try it. And they signed us to a management contract. And within about a year or 14 months, we had a record deal with Buddha Kama Sutra Records. And that was our first real experience in the industry. Each step of the way, was a growing experience. Getting back to your thought about teaching the entertainment industry class, this was my education.
Yeah,
it was in real time. We had some success locally, regionally. We did a big tour of Europe, but eventually the band was not selling records. Our label mates, I don't know if you know these guys. Our label mates at the time were a band called NRBQ.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And a guy named Buzzy Linhart, who wrote a couple of big hits. So we would tour with those guys. So we were in with some good company, and we were playing real concerts. A guy named John Scher has just started what became Metropolitan Entertainment in New Jersey. He would go on to be the preeminent presenter of the Grateful Dead in the country, but he was a young concert promoter. So we had this young management team in Alan and Stanley, this young concert promoter in New Jersey. And between the 2 of them, we got on some major shows in the area, doing concerts with the Byrds and Richie Havens in 25,000 seat. Wow. And we're like 21, 22 years old at the time. It was really heady stuff. We weren't making any money, but it was heady stuff, right?
Sure.
So there was always something new pushing me forward, right?
Yeah.
I had to drop out of college, which was a big thing. My parents did not like that idea. I was still living at home, but I said, Mom, Dad, I can't do this and go to school at the same time. I'm on the road. I'm missing classes. And that was that. Eventually, the band broke up. But by that time, I had made enough connections in the music industry that I could get work, which I did as a freelancer, a studio musician, wedding bands, anything I can do to make money. And I was able to scratch out a living as a sideman. But I always loved doing original music. I backed up a lot of original songwriters in their bands and toured with them. And it was, through those connections that I wound up meeting Tom Rush. And when I met Tom Rush and started working with him, there were 2 guys in that group, David Buskin and Robin Bateau. Buskin and Bateau, they were 2 well-known singer-songwriters in the Northeast. They both became jingle writers at 2 of the major jingle production houses in New York. Bateau wrote the great Chevy commercial, The Heartbeat of America, that was on the air for about 10 years. He was the guy behind that. Buskin wrote, Be All That You Can Be, The Army. And that's just 2 of them. These guys were making boku bucks, and they were the toast of the town on Madison Avenue. So they were kind of inspired me to get into that line of work.
Yeah, sure.
So I had to build up a resume. I didn't have a resume, so I started writing local commercials with a guy in New Jersey. Started pitching myself to other jingle houses in New York as a writer producer. One guy took me on and paid me $300 a week to just be in the office every day and work. And it was not enough to really make a living. But by that time I was married and my wife had a full-time job. So we were kind of like pooling our money. That turned out to be a blessing because that turned me on to corporate shows. This guy was a specialist in corporate communications, corporate music, which was this unknown world in the entertainment business where, in New York City, if you're an actor, singer, dancer, musician, you could earn a decent living doing product launches, car shows, special events, special material. And there was lots of money in the 1980s and 90s before things changed. There was a lot of corporate money in New York City. So there was a viable way to make a living, which I did. And I learned how to do that. That guy who hired me, excuse me, said, I'd like to do some more commercials. Do you think you could head up the commercial division for us? So I became his commercial music guy. And again, went out, hit the pavement, put together reels, presentations, answered the phone, set up meetings, hired a sales representative, and we slowly built that business up. And then I broke away and started a company with the sales representative from that company. We had my own business. Mindful of the fact that all while this was happening, I was still in the Bacon Brothers.
Oh, wow.
So, and the good thing was that Kevin was shooting a lot of movies, so we didn't tour that much. Back then, we did maybe 20 shows a year. So I was able to do the full-time commercial music for writing, commercial writing of music, and do the occasional tours. Tom Rush was doing less work. He couldn't afford to carry a band anymore, so it kind of all rolled into the next part of my life. And that's how I got into that. It was during that period that I was asked to teach at Pace. As long as I could do it once a week,
Right.
I was able to do it. Just say something else here. My wife is in the business, and our marriage has been a creative partnership. And I couldn't do any of this without her understanding what I do and me understanding what she does. So it's a 50-50 household. What I'm talking to you about now, I couldn't talk to you about without her because we both supported each other. Because it came time where I said, you got to stop doing your full-time job. You got to go back to what you started doing. Why don't you quit your job and I'll make the money? So she quit her job. She was a fantastic copywriter at Simon & Schuster. I mean, it was a ballsy thing to do. She was writing copy for some amazing books. And she quit that job to go back to acting and singing.
Wow.
I said, I'll do the full-time job. Which is really why I got the job at the first Jingle House, so that she could quit. So it became, we switched roles.
This beautiful, just kind of, you do your thing. I'll carry the load, and then, in the next season, we'll switch. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really, it's been a common, the both of us support each other, to the end.
Yeah.
That way.
Time passes slowly when you're young. A game can last forever in the summer sun. And a kid don't mind if the score is tied. And neither side is winning. Yeah, we'd stay all day if we could play extra innings. Just one more extra inning. Errors made and lessons learned. Kept your eyes wide open so you didn't get burned. The older you are, the younger you get. You're still in the game with no regrets. You know nothing lasts forever, but as the days go by, you discover faith in your family and friends, and all the love you give and the love you get takes you home again. Time passes slowly when you're young. A game can last forever in the summer sun. And a kid don't mind if the score is tied. And neither side is winning. We'd stay all day if we could play extra innings. If we could today, I wish that we could play extra innings. One more extra inning.
I think that's a relationship that two artistic people that are in the business would understand, that maybe a couple where only one person does that. They don't understand how that
It's not easy.
works.
And I
Right.
totally understand that, because we have to give each other lots of leeway. It's a drag. Being a road warrior, that alone is enough to break up marriages, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully, the great thing about being part of the Bacon Brothers is that all of us have other things to do.
Right.
So we're not going to go out for a year and a half on a tour and be away from everybody. That's never going to happen here.
Yeah. Would you, that ensemble, it's a legit thing. Does it feel a little bit like a passion project for everyone, that it's kind of this wonderful creative outlet that you all get to go and do while you have this other thing, these other endeavors that you're doing?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I know that for a fact. Michael also teaches, right? He's a full-time professor at Lehman College, which is
Is
where
he a
study.
composition teacher? What does he teach?
He teaches film scoring and electronic music.
Oh, wow.
But he's full-time. He's a tenured professor there now. So he never stopped doing that either. And it's funny because I started teaching, then he started teaching. He saw that I was doing it. And he says, "How do you like it?" I said, "It's great." But he never goes halfway. So
It sounds like it.
he went back and got his master's degree, and he aimed for tenure track, and he got it. God bless him. I don't want to do that.
That's amazing. Well, and you've composed for jingles as well, right?
We did some big campaigns over the years. For the corporate shows, we worked for name the big Fortune 500 companies. I've worked for them at some point along the way. In jingles, when we first broke into the jingle business world, it was lots of toy commercials. So all the Hasbro and Kenner toys, boatloads of stuff like that. Then when I broke away from that first production company, and my partner and I started a company called Sweet Potato Music, we did a lot of work for Procter and Gamble, household products, like Jaguar. I can't even think of them. There's lots of them. Toothpastes. It was like all kinds of products. And they paid the bills.
Yeah.
And they were anonymous. I wasn't on the camera. I was behind. I was heard on them.
Yeah. And there's some, and I don't know how you feel about it, that there's something quite appealing to me about that, to kind of just get to be artistic and not have to, there's a time and a place to be visible and be on stage and do your thing, but I also love to be able to be creative and just kind of do it behind the scenes. It's
right.
wonderful.
And the great thing about it was that they were paying you to practice your craft.
Right.
And we learned all the time. I got to work with great musicians. This is in the days before everything was done in a home studio. We would routinely see and work with some of the best singers and players in New York City that would come through the doors. And you'd have this process. There was a time at that first production house, we had 2 studios running in the building, where I was doing 2 sessions at the same time as a producer. There'd be one going downstairs, I'd be checking on them, and I'd be going upstairs and mixing something. And the days would just roll into each other. It was kind of maddening when you think about it, but it was really an education, learning how to juggle that much stuff at one time. And sometimes it didn't work, but most of the time it did, and it was really thrilling. And when you have something that really works, and it's a great feeling,
Yeah.
So it was an education, and it's where I learned how to use. I have a home studio now. I'm sitting in it, and I work with Pro Tools. It's my main axe. I learned how to. I did not go to school for electronic music, but I worked with some of the greatest electronic music people in New York City, and I looked and I watched very carefully. I also worked with some amazing engineers, because these days, to do what I do, I'm the writer, the producer, the engineer, and the player.
Right.
And I bring in players whenever the budget allows. But I'll go to an outside studio whenever the budget allows, and then just bring it back here to mix. But talk about changing times. We talked about it in terms of teaching a class, but in real life, the budgets got small, the time frames got shorter. I'm looking at AI now, and I think that's the death knell as far as I'm concerned. I can't keep up with AI, and I can understand why business people are going to just speak into their computer and have the computer spit out exactly what they want. It may not be great, but it'll do. It'll be enough. It's good enough.
Yeah.
There was an article. It was a front page article in Mix magazine about 20 years ago. It was called Good Enough, and it was about the MP3. Mix magazine, of course, was great sound. It was all about great sound, and they were lamenting the death of great audio, great sounding albums. They all sounded squashed, and the MP3 had distortion in it, but it was good enough, is the point. And I think we've all been victims of that. No matter how great your song is, it doesn't matter if it just has to be good enough.
Yeah, I think about that creative process of spending so much time to make the drum sound as perfect as possible, and you record it, and you go through this, and then you go through the mix stage and the mastering stage, and then you squash it down to this little compressed file, and it's like, what's the point of doing all of that if that's the end result, right?
I know.
It's so maddening.
Which is one of the reasons why I love live music, and I think I'll always do that. I do my own thing live because there's no comparison to that. It's different every night. Nobody can copy that.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone is going to, at least hopefully not in my lifetime, is going to go and buy a ticket to see some AI generated anything. Right? People want to be moved emotionally by another human being, being vulnerable and presenting their art to them.
Yeah.
There's
nothing like that. And going back to one of the very first shows I saw, going back to my high school days again with my friend Dan Daly, we went into the bitter end when the bitter end in the Village was just a coffee bar, no booze. Wow. And I got a cup of coffee and a dessert, and I watched John Sebastian. It was 1969.
Wow.
1969. It was after Woodstock. It was the fall after Woodstock, and he had just moved back to the Village after living in California. And he came out in his tie-dye shirt, and I was literally 10 feet away from him, sitting in a church pew. That's what the seating in the original bitter end was, church pews, which, coming from a Catholic background was like, really, I thought was very cool.
Yeah, sure.
Not sacrilegious. I said, what a great idea.
What a great idea.
And I was in the second church pew, and he was right in front of me, and he just sang John Sebastian songs. And there was nothing like it, Hadn't even seen him in the movie yet because the movie hadn't come out.
Yeah.
There he was.
Yeah. And it's that experience has, maybe the instruments are, maybe the equipment's better. I don't even know if better is the right word, but the experience is still the same, right? Mm-hmm. The humanity of it hasn't changed.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the idea of being in a room where you're breathing the same air, and in fact the air is moving from the instruments, whether if it's an acoustic piano, an upright bass, we talked about that earlier, you feel that in a room. That's much better than listening to it on your earbuds.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Exactly.
It's in the room, for heaven's sake,
Yeah, and then someone hasn't compressed the heck out of it and then made it a tiny little file. Yeah.
Not to mention the improvs that happen and the little mistakes that get turned into magic, all of that.
Yeah, it's those moments that are the reason why we did all this to begin with, right? And why we keep doing it.
That's what motivates me.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Well, Paul, I've had an absolute pleasure seeing your face again and talking with you.
I'm so glad you remembered that conversation in Atlanta and reached out to me. This was wonderful. I so appreciate it.
Yeah, it's I just had a little small sample size of you as a musician that night, and I'm glad that this has allowed me to learn more about you and just know how fascinating and wonderful of a career you've had, and that's still going.
I certainly appreciate your observing that and your interest in talking to me about it. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, best of luck to you, and
Thank you, Matt.
yeah, and thanks for the music.
You bet. Anytime. Yeah. We'll see you down the road, as I like to say.
That's right. That was my conversation with Paul Guzzone. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot if you'd follow or subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app. Maybe even leave a rating or review so more folks can discover these conversations. And if there's a bassist, producer, or music friend in your life who'd love Paul's stories, please share this episode with them. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode.